Hello and welcome to Homeland Security Today's Book Talk. I am Christina Tanaschuk, the executive editor of Homeland Security Today, and we're very excited to welcome Miho Mazereeuw, who has written the book Design Before Disaster. So welcome, Miho.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me and having me, and it's great to talk to you today.
Oh, we're excited. We, of course, are just in September celebrating or recognizing National Preparedness Month. So your book is extremely timely, and you focus in on Japan. And Japan has had tremendous challenges with natural disasters, typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, you name it, they've got it. And so you took on the task of looking at how they approach preparedness. And so we're very excited to welcome you to talk a little bit more about why you wrote this book.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, great to be part of National Preparedness Month. And I think so. The subtitle of the book is Japan's Culture of Preparedness. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But why I wrote the book, so I'm half Japanese and half Dutch. Both Netherlands and Japan have undergone a lot in terms of disasters. My parents live in Japan, in Kobe, and in 1995, Kobe had an earthquake, really devastating. The city was in chaos, a lot of fatalities and a lot of damage. Luckily, my parents weren't there during the earthquake itself, but they participated in the recovery. And it was also, yeah, really eye-opening to see. It was a turning point, I think, in disaster management in Japan, where there was a realization that residents have to take part in this. It's not just a top-down thing that can be managed and controlled, but that residents groups, and especially during the recovery, there was a lot of new groups that came up that participated in the recovery and made it stronger because of that. And so I was very interested, both from a personal reason, but also academically interested in collecting and tracking that. And then, so my father's an engineer on a ship, and for many years he sailed, and he always made the analogy of on a ship, everyone goes through training, everyone is prepared, including not just the captain, but all the people who are on the ship. They're trained for the if-then situation. And then everything on the ship is really designed very specifically to be able to withstand these kinds of events and then also to be used when necessary. And so that was an analogy that always stuck with me. And he always was talking about how we need to be prepared for everything. And then my mother, who's Japanese, helped collect newspaper articles, interview people. And so there was just this wealth of knowledge that I was sitting on. And then yeah, it became a book project, and it really, I am ashamed to say that it took too long. It took many decades for it to come out, but it not only shares case studies from the Kobe event, but then also the Tohoku tsunami, and goes back in history to map out many things that led to changes in zoning code and law. And so it's a lot of information, but I hope people enjoy it.
Well, it seems like it's a true Bible, and perhaps it was fate that had you publish it at this time because it's never been more needed, probably. So I do want to give our listeners a little bit of background about you because you are the MIT Climate Mission Director for Empowering Frontline Communities. You're an associate professor, and you also lead the Urban Risk Lab. So your background and the contributions you're making to preparedness are really tremendous. So as you learned more to write this book, and certainly as you teach your students and everything, was there anything interesting or kind of unexpected that you learned while writing this book? Did the process of writing it bring anything out?
Yeah, absolutely. So the process of writing, documenting, learning, interviewing people, visiting all these places, has influenced both my teaching and then the work that we do in the lab a lot. So there are many things that we learned where there are gaps in this process, despite how much money and how much investment goes into this in Japan. There's still gaps in the process in communication and having residents engage in this process. And so wherever we learned from those gaps, we also try to have projects in the lab that help to fulfill those issues. And so many of the projects are quite directly connected to things that we learned through the research of this. And I think um, it's not a surprise, but really when you have projects where all levels of government and the community come together, and by community, I mean really residents who live there, community members, educators, architects, landscape architects, and planners, when they come together in partnership with emergency managers to really understand what is needed at each stage of, say, the disaster cycle preparedness, and then response, recovery, mitigation, adaptation, and back into preparedness. When there's this strong partnership in a committed way over multiple years, there are a lot of amazing projects that come out of that and a lot of success stories. And I think that we're challenged because in every part of our lives there's high turnover and so but I think that there are a number of projects within the book that do articulate how important that partnership is, and how my background is in architecture and landscape architecture, and I teach in the urbanism program here as well, and how we design and build the built environment and how we then partner with emergency managers. Really, it's really important that those two pieces come together, and often they don't, right? Like often you don't see that much. There is quite a bit of discussion around resilience, but it doesn't always go quite hand in hand as much as we would like it to be.
Absolutely. And so, what do you think is a lesson from the book that the United States could take away immediately?
Hmm.
Because building a culture of preparedness is something we've been working on for a long, long time. And that's a complicated and multi-year process to align, the expectations of the public with the ability of a FEMA or another organization to really come to everyone's rescue. There's no way, like in the disasters you describe in Japan, that the government can come and save every last person.
Yeah.
It has to be a true community effort because they're on the ground. They're the ones that are there to respond and certainly to help one another right after a disaster. So, what can the US do like tomorrow? Miho, what can we do?
Wow. If I had a magic wand, no, I think that it's important to know that there isn't a flick of the switch, right? That it is important to really commit to building these cultures of preparedness in all parts of your life. And so with your neighbors, so there's a piece in there in the book too about how there's a tradition of getting to very close to the two neighbors that live beside you and then the neighbors that live in front of you, so that there is constant communication when necessary, but also in the regular day. So I think that something that I tried to really advocate for in the book is this idea of dual use. And we do this, we have many dual use projects within the lab as well, but to really think of how your everyday connects to when you have to respond. Right. So it's really what we talk about in terms of preparedness, but sometimes preparedness ends up becoming like a training drill or something like that, which is not bad. But I think the more you can integrate it into your daily life, of understanding that this is how it operates in blue sky days, and then this is what needs to happen in gray sky days. And so I think in terms of my profession, so for the people who really design, build the world around us, understanding where the flood zones are, where we should and shouldn't be building, and when we end up building in places that may be within a hazard zone, then what is this dual use that needs to be designed into it, right? So some examples are, there's a whole chapter in the book on park networks and strategies and how they're connected between parks that are really used for, well, they're all parks, so they're all used for everyday fun and sports and communities, but that the largest parks are used for logistics when there is a big disaster and distributing goods, and then the smallest parks are used for evacuation, and how each of those are designed so that the everyday fun and engaging piece happens, but there are pieces of that that transition so that the park can be used for evacuation, so that the park can be used for recovery. And all of that, when it's built into your environment, it becomes something beyond a training manual, but it's what you live and breathe within your neighborhood. And I think that the strength of what's happening there is that it is, again, working closely with emergency managers. So it's not architects and landscape architects going off and designing things on their own without really partnering, and without understanding what things need to be in place for a place to actually be an effective emergency evacuation center. And there's also a whole section in there in terms of schools and hotels and other buildings that could be designed to really support emergency managers during those times of need, and for the public to understand that they're stewards of their own environment too, and so that they are sort of have this built-in awareness and built-in preparedness.
That's always a tough one. Getting the public involved. I mean, I live on kind of a peninsula, and I asked if there was an emergency management committee, and I was practically laughed out of the room. So it's it's very interesting how battling the it's never happened before
Mhm.
is very difficult, and just because it didn't happen before doesn't mean it can never happen. So yeah, I really applaud you for writing the book, and we're so excited to be able to talk with you today. If you don't get it yet, it's Design Before Disaster: Japan's Culture of Preparedness. It's available on Amazon, and we will have a link to purchase it at Homeland Security Today. So Miho, thank you for joining us, and please keep us up to date with anything that you want to share around preparedness. We welcome you to do a column or whatever you'd like to help share the message. Did
I
you?
would love to do that. Yeah. And just one last thing, I'd like to say that we are making a website, designbefore-disaster.org, where we're planning on posting more resources and links to other places where people can get more information as well, both about
Excellent.
Japan and many things that is going on around the world.
Well, we'd be happy to cover that and certainly provide a space so people can find that through HS Today as well. So thank you again for joining us, and certainly thank you for spending the time to write the book. I was so thrilled to meet you up at MIT and get, I think, the first signed copy. So I'm very honored, and it is a great accomplishment. So congratulations, and we look forward to maintaining a relationship and continuing to share your good work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today. And I agree, I'd love to continue working together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.